Hi everyone, welcome to our next Phase 5 phonics lesson. We'll start the lesson by going back through the activity that we set in our last lesson to see how you got on. So we were looking at the sound with the I and the R, and you have this list of words to go through and check. So I'm just going to read them back to you and we can give them a tick or a cross, depending on if they're real or nonsense words. The first word, churt, yeah, nonsense word. And then we've got skirt, yeah. Lurt, no, that's a nonsense word. Then we've got 13, that was one of the ones we looked at, wasn't it, in that lesson. Dirt, yeah. Turl, no, that's a nonsense word. We've got sir, yeah, that's a real word. Merst, no, that's not a real word. A similar one here, pursed, no, that's not a real word. We've got e, remember that Y makes the E sound at the end of a word. Oh, I nearly put a cross, but that's a tick, of course, isn't it? And then we've got no, that's a nonsense word. And then the last one, stir. Well done to you if you got all of those right. Right, we'll start our next session by going through our flashcards again, looking at our phase 3, reminding ourselves of some of the phase 3 and the phase 5 sounds that we've learned so far. I'll hold them up to the screen, give you a second or two before I say the sound. Qu, ch, or th, a, e, I, o, oi, oo or ow, ah, air, ear, or, your, a, ow, I, e, oi, Okay, right, we're going to leave our phase 3 and phase 5 sounds there because today we're looking at some tricky words in today's lesson. So they are ones where we need to just practice and try to remember those tricky patterns in the words that can't be explained with our phonics skills. So today we're looking at a few different tricky words. I'm going to show you them in a moment on flashcards. And then we're going to have a go at writing them as well. So firstly, we've got the word Mr. Okay, on the back here of these flashcards, they show you how we can sound that out as a full word. And it's what we call abbreviated normally. We wouldn't normally write that out as a full word like that, but you probably have seen many times, like when we see Mr. Lyons, Mr. Godfrey, Mr. Milner, we see written like that, just with the two letters, Mr. If we were to look at it like this, it kind of makes sense. Mr. Okay, but we'd write it in that form, usually Mr. Okay. Similar is Mrs. So for a man, you would say Mr. If it's a lady, you would say Mrs. if she's a married lady. Otherwise, if she's not married, you'd say Miss, which is just M-I-S-S, Miss. But this one, Mrs, is actually an abbreviation of mistress. She's a mistress. M-I-S-T-R-S. Mistress, which makes a bit more sense, but we wouldn't usually write it in that form. We'd usually use these 3 letters, Mrs. So that's our first 2 tricky words, Mr. and Mrs. Okay, and then the next one we're going to look at is the word looked. Looked. She looked very happy today. Looked. So we've often had this word look, and that's where the oo makes the short sound. Look. But we've added ed on the end. But we don't say as ed. It makes a t sound almost. Looked. Okay. And then another one we're looking at today, called. So in our reading books, often it might say over here, called Chip. Okay, to explain that the way somebody is saying something, or if you've called somebody on the phone. So all, you might recognise that word in the middle, all. We don't say called, called. So almost that E is silent. That's the tricky part. Called. And then another one, working you hard today with the tricky words, asked. Ask. And some people do pronounce it like that, depending on what accent you have. Asked. And it makes a t sound again, doesn't it? Like in looked. Asked. Okay, when you're asking a question. Okay, so I'm going to show them up to the screen again. And we'll have a look at writing them as well. We'll write them together. Oops. Okay. Put them in a slightly different order. Mr. Called. Asked. Looked. Mrs. Okay. So if we just go back to our slides. There are focus sounds for today. Let's have a go at writing them. Look at one at a time before we look at some sentences as well. So let's first of all start with that Mr. and Mrs. like we would use when we're saying people's names. So because these are names, we'd always give these capital letters. The first one starting Mr. Have a go at writing that one down. Mr. Okay, and then the next one, just the same, because it's used for people's names, it's their title, we'd give it a capital M, Mrs. So same as Mr, but we need a S on the end as well, Mrs. Okay. You can pause the video at any time to have a go at writing them, so take your time. We're going to try the word looked next. So L makes that short sound, L, k. So that part is, we can use our phonics to help us. It's the ending, isn't it, that makes it the tricky part, looked, because it makes that t sound. I'll underline the tricky part, looked. Makes a t sound rather than ed, which is what we can see. Okay, had a go at writing that. And then our next word is asked, or some people might say ask. So that's the word ask or ask, if you ask a question. And again, it's this tricky ending. Asked. Okay. And then the last one, it's the ending part again. Called. So we've got this word that we might recognise, k, and then this all bit in the middle, like the word all, k, Called. All we can hear there is the d. We can't hear the d, just the d. Okay, so those endings are tricky, aren't they? And they're what we call also suffixes on words, because the word ask is a word of its own. We've added a suffix just to change the meaning. So you can ask a question, or if it's happened already, you've asked the question. Or you might call somebody on the phone, or you might be telling somebody that you've already called somebody on the phone. So it's turning what we call a verb into the past tense. Okay, so that's having a look at writing them all. Let's have a look at reading some sentences with those tricky words in. So here we go. I'm going to have a go at reading them, and then we're going to pick one to have a go at writing out. All right, let's look at this first one together. So using the sound buttons as always and looking out for those tricky words, we're going to have a go at reading this. So is, it. Here's our tricky word. Hopefully you've got it. It's not the male version, it's the female version. Mrs. Is it, and we can see the capital letter there, capital letter for here for the name. Is it Mrs. Browns birthday? All digraphs that we've looked at before already. Birthday. And here's another tricky word. Today. Is it Mrs. Brown's birthday today? And that's a question, isn't it? We're waiting for a response. Is it Mrs. Brown's birthday today? Okay, there's another sentence here for you to try. I'm going to ask you to pause the video so you can have a go at doing just what I did there, to add the sound buttons and then to have a go at reading that sentence. Okay, let's have a look at that one. So this time we've got Mr. and Mrs. So they're married. Mr. and Mrs. Smith, and we've used the capital letter for the name and the titles for that person, all those people. We don't say the E, looked, but it still needs the E and the D together. Sad, it's this, morning. Mr. and Mrs. Smith looked sad this morning. Oh, that's a shame. So hopefully you got that as well. You read that correctly. And if you didn't, then you can spot there what you may have done wrong. So I'm going to go back up to this sentence here, and we're going to have a go at writing it. So we're going to read it through one more time together. I'm going to cover it over, read it again, and then you can pause the video to have a go at sounding those words out really carefully and have a go at writing it. Is it Mrs. Brown's birthday today? Is it Mrs. Brown's birthday today? Right, let's cover it over. Say it one more time. Is it Mrs. Brown's birthday today? It's always good to maybe count those words that we need in that sentence. We've thought about the sentence that we want to write. We say it back to ourselves. Is it Mrs. Brown's birthday today? Okay, so there's 6 words there. Say it back to yourself again. Take one word at a time. Keep going back to the beginning. Is it, then is it Mrs., is it Mrs. Brown's? Work through the sentence like that. Have a go at writing it yourself. Give it a shot. It might be quite tricky, but we'll go through it together once you've had a chance to write it. Okay, let's have a look. Here it is revealed again. So is, hopefully you got that one with a capital letter. It. Mrs. So one of our tricky words. Hopefully you've remembered that one. And we needed the capital letter. Browns. This apostrophe is here because it's her birthday. The birthday belongs to that person, so we use an apostrophe there. Birthday, big long word, but we did look at birth when we were looking at the sound, and we've looked at day before and today, and hopefully you remembered a question mark. Quite a tricky sentence. Hopefully you did really well with that. I'm sure you did. Now, to end for today's lesson, to practice a little bit more of our tricky words at home, you can log on to Phonics Play using these login details. Go to the Phase 5 resources, and there you will find the Tricky Word Trucks flashcards. So it takes you through all of those words that we've looked at today and recaps on some others and maybe some that you haven't looked at yet, but have a go at reading them. See if you can test yourself and get quicker at reading those tricky words. Good job today. It was hard work. You did really well. See you in the next lesson.